Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. The coronation of Kamala Harris is in full swing. We'll see if this lasts. As journalists, Hollywood, and fellow Democrats circle the wagons around the presumptive Democratic nominee. Following a big rally in Atlanta last night, complete with a Megan Thee Stallion performance, very classy, the lyrics of her song. Kamala Harris is suddenly the next Barack Obama, a celebrity, instantaneously after they couldn't stand her 10 days ago. And in the New York Times' words, her event dwarfed Mr. Biden's 2024 campaign events in both scale and enthusiasm. You know who else did that? Donald Trump. But you didn't write about it like that. It comes as we are hearing the guy who we believe, we're not sure, it seems he is, still president of the United States, is being cast in a supporting role at the upcoming Democratic National Convention, relegated to speaking on gasp day one. This is supposed to be his convention. It doesn't even get into the primetime Wednesday or Thursday night slots. Meantime, new polling signals a shift in this race in favor of Kamala Harris as the corporate media continues its onslaught against former President Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance. We're going to dive into it all with our first guest, Batya Ungar-Sargon, opinion editor at Newsweek and author of Second Class. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Hungry Root is one very easy way to eat healthy. They send you fresh, high-quality groceries, simple, delicious recipes, and essential supplements. It's like having someone else do all the planning and shopping so you don't even have to think about it. This is what we need. Hungry Root gets to know your personal health goals, dietary restrictions, favorite foods, how much time you want to spend cooking, and more. And then they build you a personalized cart for the week, including easy 4-ingredient recipes to put those groceries to use. Each order is fully customizable. They've got fresh produce, high-quality meat, healthy snacks, and more. Everything from Hungry Root follows a simple standard. It's got to taste good, it's got to be quick to make, and it's got to contain whole, trusted ingredients. Hungry Root is now offering the Megyn Kelly Show viewers 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. How does that work? Go to hungryroot.com to find out /Megyn. hungryroot.com/Megyn. Get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. hungryroot.com/MEGYN. Don't forget to use our link so they know we sent you.
Thank you so much for having me, Megyn. It's great to be here with you.
Okay, can we just start with the news on what's happened with Israel? Well, we don't know that it was Israel. That's my assumption. But with this Hamas top leader being assassinated in Tehran. This is interesting to me. I mean, I think most of the world suspects Israel because they said we're going to exact retribution for what was done to our people on 10/7, and we know Hamas committed that. This is a powder keg, right? It's a powder keg because Hezbollah is getting a little bit more aggressive and Israel's responding to them. Now we see the top Hamas guy taken out, and here's where I want to go with it. Where's our president? Where's the U.S. president? Because normally when the Middle East starts doing its serious powder keg thing, we have a sitting president, reassure the American people, have a meeting with the leaders, try to keep things from boiling over because it's not in our best interest to see that happen. As far as I know, we haven't heard from him on anything like this, right? It was Kamala Harris who issued a statement last week after her meeting with Netanyahu. It was a Kamala Harris whose people issued a statement this week after the Hezbollah dust up, not Joe Biden. And even today, Joe Biden has yet to issue a statement on any of this. Do we have a sitting president or don't we?
It's such a great point, Megyn. He really does seem to be MIA, carrying on from what seems to have been his modus operandi for the last year. But at least there were sort of symbolic statements that would come out of the White House. And you're absolutely right. They do seem to have passed the torch already to Vice President Kamala Harris, who's been the one kind of taking the lead and making statements about this. We did hear from Anthony Blinken this morning, although his response was really, really awful. He basically came out and said the U.S. had nothing to do with this and we know nothing about it. I mean, nothing about America's ally taking out a terrorist leader, nothing about America's ally dealing with America's enemies, right? Taking on our enemies as Americans, which makes us safer in the world. Simply, we don't know anything about this. We don't know them. This is not on our watch. And basically what he's doing there is reprising the Obama doctrine, which, if you recall, Obama on foreign policy, by and large, what he sought to do was to weaken U.S. allies and give succor to our enemies. He had this view that there should be sort of balance in the world. And what that meant was none of America's allies should feel like they were sovereign and independent. He always sought to kind of weaken, take the rug out from under them. And we're really seeing that again coming out of Antony Blinken. And I don't think there's any reason to think that a Kamala Harris presidency wouldn't be in that exact same mold.
Yeah. Right now we've got Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah, saying that Iran considers revenge as its duty. Again, this is a top Hamas leader who was killed, but he was killed inside Tehran. You've got Hamas's armed wing saying that this will have major repercussions. You've got Iran's Revolutionary Guard saying this will be met with a harsh and painful response. And, all of this is getting fever pitch. Normally, we might see a statement from the president of the United States about reaching out to these leaders, in particular in Israel, or the connections that we have with Hamas. So far, nothing. Blinken's not the president. I realize he's got a diplomatic role to play too, but this is a pattern we're seeing now. It's like Joe Biden said, I'm not running for re-election. And we were supposed to just read the quiet part in our heads, which is he secretly resigned the presidency too. And it's a team governing now. So not only is he missing here, he will be, let's face it, second short shrift at the Democratic National Convention, where night one is fine if you're a friend or a surrogate for the president, the nominee. But if you are the sitting president whose nomination this was, the delegates who will be voting for Kamala Harris voted for him. He's the one they chose. This is not like a Bill Clinton after 8 years, or a Barack Obama where they speak after 8 years as they're going out willingly. It's amazing to me that to the end, they try to bury him, try to put him in the basement, and try to make us forget how infirm he is.
But also the ritual humiliation by his closest friends, right?
Yeah.
The ceaseless stabbing in the back. Before he stepped down, you had this feeling like the Obamas and the Clooneys and the Pelosi's of the world wanted him to humiliate himself as much as possible just so they could get him off the ticket. A man who they have been friends with for 50 years, a man who they protected as long as they could keep from the American people the truth of his state of mind, right? And I just can't get over that. You don't have to like Donald Trump, you don't have to be a Republican, but come on. Where's the outrage from average Democratic voters, not in the elites, at how the man they voted for is being treated? Just at a human level, to see an elderly person first sort of pushed to keep going beyond what he was capable of, and then ritualistically humiliated again and again and again. For God's sake, couldn't they have put him on, Wednesday? Okay, fine. You don't want to give him Thursday. You can't bring yourselves to give him, a minute of time during this whole yassification of Kamala Harris. Fine. But Monday, really? This is ritual humiliation of Joe Biden for the crime of exposing the Democratic elites for, number one, not believing in democracy. As you pointed out, Megyn, they all voted for Joe Biden and they got Kamala Harris. Number two, for lying to the American people, right? He exposed the media's lies and perfidiousness by failing to mask his own state of mind better, right? And then, of course, for exposing the Obama legacy, right? Obama was the captain of the oligarchy of the credentialed. The Democrats don't just have different values than the Republicans. The Republicans aren't just evil, but they're stupid, right? That's the Obama legacy. He refused to talk to anybody who didn't have an Ivy League degree. And Joe Biden, with his fumbling, mumbling infirmity, his inability to complete a sentence, right? He showed up the Democrats as being these frauds who had portrayed themselves as the expert class. We are the side of science, blah, blah, blah. And for all of these crimes, for exposing the Democrats for who they really are, they pulled out this massive hook and just pulled him off stage. And now they are intent on humiliating him until his last breath.
This just in, President Biden has made a statement on X. It reads as follows. Farmers and ranchers work round the clock to put food on our tables and steward our nation's land. They should never experience discrimination in farm loan programs. That's what someone pretending to be President Biden is tweeting about. Not the Middle East, not Tehran threatening to get Israel. No, it's about discrimination in farming, which I'm sure is a very interesting topic to President Biden. Right now, I'm sure he's debating it hotly with his staff. But this is some 20-year-old's idea of what's appropriate right now, as we still have not heard from him. Okay, so let's talk about the coronation, because it's stomach turning. It's so fake. She hasn't done anything to justify this newfound love of her. You know, Lowry was making the point on the editors, like, they all went to her because they were forced to when Biden imploded. She hasn't done anything to come to them to say, let me earn it, and these are the positions I have, and let me dazzle you, right? No, they're like, we're stuck with you, so we will love you. It's like a forced marriage where, you know, the bride is like, I'm going to try to focus on his gleaming white teeth instead of everything that's around it, right? Like, they have to love her. But it is stomach turning to watch the media's sycophancy around this woman who we know they do not actually love.
Yeah, it's so amazing. This is the only way Kamala Harris could have gotten to the top of a presidential ticket. We all know that because we were all around 4 years ago when her campaign for president imploded before a single vote was cast.
Yeah, it's not like she was close. And now we're all it's not like she was lady in waiting exactly, and she almost got there. It wasn't that. It wasn't like Hillary versus Barack. She was blown out. They had zero interest in her and her crazy far left positions, which she was running on as recently as 19.
Right, that's exactly right. Somebody on Twitter made a really funny joke. They said, I am tied with Vice President Kamala Harris for the number of votes she got for president in 2020, which is 0, right? And it's so amazing to see her sort of try to go back to kind of Democrat factory settings, right? Because in order to get ahead in that primary, she went far, far, far to the left. And now she's simply reversing every single one of those positions, which of course raises the question that you raised, Megyn, which is, okay, so what has she done to make her worthy of this coronation, right? Which I've been calling the ossification because, right, there's nothing there beyond just vibes, right? And it's so insulting to their voters. They show such contempt for them. This idea that they don't have to bring out a single piece of policy that she could say, this is my signature, this is what I represent. She only represents their conviction that Joe Biden could not beat Donald Trump. And it's so amazing to me that we're supposed to just buy this after the media lied about Joe Biden and then did this 180 on him, turning absolutely vicious, giving him the Trump treatment to get him off that stage. And now once again, this 180 on a woman who has really brought very little to this ticket and to this moment. It's a really, really amazing thing to see. And I think, you know, people keep saying, they keep trying to sell this on MSNBC, that this is kind of 2008 again, that, you know, this is the next, you know, Barack Obama. But I really do think it's ringing really, really hollow at this moment. We're past the kind of apex of the woke movement that tried to pass off this canard that Americans are divided based on race. We have just gotten past that as a society. I don't know if you saw this, but the liberal patriot Rui Teixeira's newsletter came out this morning with data from a new study that showed that the white wealth gap gap, meaning the wealth gap between rich white people and poor white people, is now bigger than the black-white wealth gap, okay? Everybody knows this. The real divide in America is along class lines. It's not along race lines. And so for her to come out the gate and say, what I'm bringing to the table is representation, what she represents is the elites, right? And I think that this is very, very clear to the American people right now.
So I know that you've been writing about this, but that is obviously her narrative and her background versus the background of JD Vance is one of the many reasons they find him so threatening and that he must be destroyed. You had this Kentucky governor, Andy Beshear, has been going off on JD Vance. We've been playing the sound bites. He's very threatened by him. And he's like, he talks about his origin story. What's that? Normal human beings have a childhood. What's an origin story? As if that's not a common term that people talk about. Like, my origin story is really like roots in Kentucky, moved to Middletown. That is something that people say. And the reason they're so triggered by it has in part to do with her privilege. She cannot run on white privilege in this race, not just because of her own background, but also because of JD's.
I think that's exactly right. She has the kind of background that really predicts for upward mobility. Her mother has a PhD. They valued education very much at home. Her bio, her official bio on the White House talks about her loving extended family. And these are all of the things that predict for upward mobility in America today, whereas JD comes out of this broken situation, these broken, destroyed communities in the Rust Belt, which were destroyed by Democratic policies like, NAFTA, opening the border, defunding vocational training in schools, thank you, Presidents Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden. And that's where he comes out of. JD Vance is a survivor of domestic violence. There are so many people who look to that thing that he survived, who are experiencing that right now and seeing that representation and thinking, wow, it can really get better. And that moment at the RNC where he pointed to his mom, who's been clean for 10 years after struggling with heroin, and President Trump stood up for her and joined that tearful standing ovation. Do you know how many people in America were looking at that and thinking, wow, we were forgotten and we were left behind and nobody cared about us. And they tried to hide it with all of this racial language to divide us. And look at what can be if we don't give up on ourselves, because that ticket has not given up on us. That really is what the choice of JD Vance represented. I think it was so clever of the Trump campaign to really go in that direction. And it's such a contrast with Kamala Harris. And again, really exposing the ways in which the leftist elites use the language around race as a smokescreen to hide the ways in which they have benefited from the class divide, and the communities that JD Vance comes from have really paid the price.
Oh my gosh, that's so well said, Batya. She's literally written a book on this. It's called Second Class. You can see it over her right shoulder on the screen. Well worth your time. But that moment at the convention really was meaningful to me because you could see his mom, Beverly, has lived a rough life. She wasn't all dolled up. I mean, she looked lovely. I'm just saying that she wasn't like a perfectly coiffed Michelle Obama type, like, oh, look at me. And they put her out there. There was a moment between the two of them. And what was meaningful about it to me was it's not a great relationship. Like, JD's been pretty open about the fact that he was an abused child in many ways. It's not that she was hitting him. It's that she scared him to within an inch of his life. She put him in that car. She drove at excessive speeds and said she was going to kill them both. That's abuse. The family strong-armed him into not testifying against her with the truth. When she then got charged criminally, she was actively addicted to drugs and then eventually heroin. She was bringing man after man into her home with young children, including a little boy, JD. He was having Pepsi in the baby bottle. He was sleeping in the jeans. He didn't have somebody really looking after him other than when his grandma came into the picture more full-time, Mama. And she she helped JD. And his mom stuck around and she helped him with some homework and things like he writes about it all in Hillbilly Elegy. It's not that he loathes his mom, but I can speak to this personally. When you've got someone in your family who's got a rampaging drug addiction, it ruins them, and it can ruin your relationship, and it can ruin your family, at least temporarily. And those scars may not fully ever heal. And so it was actually really damn brave for them to put her out there. And JD didn't try to say, like, we're all good, talking about her. There was a reference in the speech that kind of suggested she's here and, it's complicated. And that's terrifying to them, because what do, Batya? They look at JD and Trump and their followers, and they see deplorables. They see bitter clingers. They see fat losers who are on drugs. And they mock them. Like, behind closed doors with their Harvard degrees, they would have nothing to do with these people. Nothing. But they know they need some of them to vote for them, right? So they're placed in this impossible position. So they've got to run to their base, women who love abortion, to say, he's the devil and he hates you.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I've had a very similar thought when members of JD's family came up on the stage at the RNC, and a lot of them had tattoos and other things that you don't usually see on display in the sort of hallowed grounds of the American elites. Yeah. And it was just incredibly powerful to say, you guys matter. You guys have a seat at the table. And you're so right, Megyn, about how JD spoke to his mom. That implied forgiveness, right. That implied grace, if you will, right? Which I'm sure is very tied to his conversion to Catholicism, which seems to have had a really deep impact on how he sees the world and on how he sees the community that he comes from, all of its problems and so forth. I totally agree with you. I think that is really, really dangerous to them. I will say, there's nothing wrong with apologizing for comments that you may have made when you were kind of, less prominent about, women
Here's
with
why
no
he can't.
children.
But I'll tell you why he can't, because he said him so many times. The childless cat lady phrase, not so much, but the underlying point, he believes. It's not that childless people are bad. I don't think he believes that. But he really believes that there is a need to fight in defense of the choice to procreate. Like, he feels like that is under attack by a section of the left that thinks there's some sort of shame in bringing children into this fragile world mostly for environmental reasons. There may be shame attached to actually doing it, and that the good thing to do would be not to, if you really care about the world and those imagined children, because what are you setting them up for? And he's been attacked by them. And so if you go back and look at when he was making these comments, many times he references himself being under attack by these people. And it's because he's getting tired of listening to them tell people that it's irresponsible to have children. And so you can see a guy in a defensive posture, saying kind of F off. The future of the country and the world depends on people having children. And these childless cat ladies can STFU. That's the MK version of it.
Yeah, I totally hear all of that. My counterpoint would just be the GOP is in its big tent era, it's broadening its doors. There are masses and masses of people who would never have considered becoming Republicans before, who now are really considering it. And I think that the posture of the Trump campaign should be, we're not willing to sacrifice a single one, even if they are misunderstanding us. And I would urge people, that's why I think it's really important not to sort of refer to Kamala Harris as a DEI candidate, DEI hire. What if there's one person, one Black man who for the first time was going to vote for a Republican and is not paying such close attention, right? He's busy trying to feed his family in Joe Biden's economy, which is very difficult, right? Paying attention with half an ear, and it rings, oh, I know what they mean by that, Why sacrifice even one of those people? We have a country to save, right? I think that should be sort of the posture. And I think that there are a lot of people who traditionally would have been on the other side of some of these culture war debates who for the real economic reasons that Trump is bringing to the table, the really incredible economic agenda to bring back the middle class that the Democrats don't have, right? That is such a winning argument. Trump is such a centrist. When you look at Trump's agenda, you look at the position Trump has chosen on every single issue, Megyn, it has 60, 65, 70% among the American people, whether it's abortion, mass deportations, Social Security, Medicare, unions, right? All of these issues, Trump has rediscovered that middle lane. It is such a precious thing to have given back to the American people. And that's kind of where I think the future of politics is. And the fact that the GOP has gotten there, it's a huge achievement.
Yeah, there is a moderate in this race. It's not Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the JD Vance comments because all over they keep finding more comments along these lines, and every day create another news cycle around them. And it's like, we get it. This is how he feels, and he said it in many places. So today you've got headlines all over the place, Huffington Post and elsewhere, excerpting JD Vance says the following about women. I don't have my. Oh yeah, okay. Here's this one. Look at this. We have to go to war against the idea that women don't have to have kids. That's how they're representing it. This is actually in a few places. They're saying, he said, we have to go to war against the idea that women don't have to have kids. Okay. So we went back and actually looked at the interview that he gave to the Federalist in 2021, and we're going to play you his remarks that they based that false headline on. And then I'll tell you exactly what was going on in the media before he made these remarks. Actually, I'll just tell you now before we go into it. It was 2021. This idea was growing in popularity, that to have children was a bad idea. It was irresponsible for the reasons I stated. And he went on the Federalist 10 days after Mother's Day in 2021. And right around Mother's Day, this messaging was gearing up in earnest. 2021, here's Elle Magazine, why I can't stop thinking about child-free women. On my fourth Mother's Day, I find myself more drawn than ever to women who decided against having children. That's a nice Mother's Day celebration, Elle. 2021, today's parent. I love my kids, but I don't like parenting, and I know I'm not alone. Of course, that fierce forever love is a given, but the actual day in, day out vagaries of parenting for me and a growing number of North American moms, that's a hard pass. Okay, there's some other headlines out around this time. The Atlantic, 2 reasons parents regret having children. Carrie wishes she'd never had them. She spent a few years feeling satisfied as a mother, but now locks herself in the kitchen and wonders, who am I? What am I doing here? She can't pursue paid work because she has no shepherd. She has to shepherd her 12-year-old and 10-year-old to school, as well as to therapy appointments for their disabilities. Carrie, who lives in the UK, told me she often fantasizes about visiting her friend in Hawaii and never coming back. Here's another one, BuzzFeed. Right around the same time, 15 parents shared why they regret having kids, and their reasons why are 100% valid. And then comes JD. He sits on the Federalist, May of 2021, right after Mother's Day, and says the following.
I also think, just to be a little stark about this, I think we have to go to war against the anti-child ideology that exists in our country. Mm-hmm. A few weeks ago, no, Twitter is not real life. But I forget even what caused it, but there was this ridiculous effort by millennial feminist writers to talk about why having kids was not a good thing, why they were glad they didn't have kids, and even encouraging people who had had children to talk about why they regretted having children, which of course is like
Mother's Day book.
On Mother's Day, which is like psychologically deranged to ask mothers on Mother's Day to talk about why they regretted having children. And what it made me realize is that so much of what drives elite culture is mediocre millennial journalists who haven't gotten out of their career what they thought they would, right? And the thing is, everybody can be an exceptional mother and father. Not everybody can be an exceptional journalist at the New York Times. And not enough people have accepted that if they put their entire life's meaning into their credential, into where they went to school, into what kind of job they have, if you put all of your life's meaning into that, you're going to be the sort of person who asks women to talk about how they regret having children. You're going to be a sad, lonely, pathetic person, and you're going to know it internally, so you're going to project it onto people who have actually built something more meaningful with their lives. I think we have to go to war against that ideology and the people behind it, because we need to say to the people in my hometown I've seen this with, just to be honest, with my sister. I love my sister is just the best person. I love her to death. And sometimes, she'll say things to me like, maybe I should have delayed having kids. Maybe I should have went to school. Maybe I should have did this or that. And it's like, Lindsay, you've been a great mom. Your children are happy. They're healthy. You've taken good care of them. You've shown me, she was my older sister. She took care of me a lot in a very chaotic home. People like my sister should not feel like the cultural messaging is your life is inadequate. The people who are sending that message should feel that their life is inadequate.
Pretty remarkable when you hear what he actually said versus how he's being portrayed, Batya. It's a lie. What he said in that interview, and you heard the whole context, was we have to go to war against the anti-child ideology that's being spread. The very idea that having them is a mistake for anyone. The attack was incoming on parents. He was defending parents and those who choose to procreate against the attack. He wasn't launching one on people who make a different choice.
That's a great point. Yeah, our mutual friend Bethany Mandel was texting me about this. She said, people don't understand, people who don't have kids don't understand how frequently we get attacked for being parents, how impatient people are with us, how much contempt they have for us, that is a real thing. I think there's another thing going on here, Megyn, which is, JD Vance is very, very young, right? This is a person who had, a very robust online life before ascending to the position that he's in as, potential next vice president of the United States. We will never again not have this situation where somebody was very free flowing with their words, spoke a lot about a cultural issue that deserved attention and that, he felt passionately about, that deserved to be part of the conversation, that maybe is not exactly how he would have phrased it if he was running for office, right? We are always now going to have that, because our elected officials are going to be getting younger and younger and have more and more of an online record to talk about and respond to. And that is something that we're going to have to get used to. And if we're just saying people are disqualified because of the way that they might have phrased something while being on a podcast, right? While finding
but that's not even what they're saying. That's not what they're saying. They're trying to make it into something other than what it is. They're trying to put an evil spin on it. And this plays right into their long-running approach to running against Republicans to make them anti-woman. That they genuinely believe that because of abortion. They really believe that if you are pro-life, you are anti-woman. Even if you're pro-baby. Like they're running right now. They're so thrilled. There have been thought pieces on how Kamala Harris is such a badass because of the way she cross-examined Brett Kavanaugh when he was being confirmed. The 19 words that changed the whole confirmation hearing. And it was something to the effect of, like, can you name me a law that controls what a man does with his body? And Brett Kavanaugh stumbled because he wasn't good in those confirmation hearings. And the proper answer is, no, because men don't have the privilege of sharing a body with a little baby and growing another human. This is something only a woman can do, which the left won't acknowledge in any other context. But this is only a woman. This is only a woman's job. And the law, the Constitution, the Supreme Court has constantly acknowledged, the Supreme Court has always acknowledged that that's a balancing test. There is without question a period, even under the Roe era, where the baby's rights become legally significant and must be considered in addition to the mother's. That's the Roe era. Anyway, that's not a slam by Kamala Harris. She doesn't know what of course a man doesn't have to deal with that. He doesn't create babies. Maybe she forgot that because she is a leftist. All right, let me say one other thing. This is up your alley. They're trying to take a shot at him in class. Like I said, Andy Bashir, he ain't one of us. This is like Silver Spoon lawyer whose dad was rich, who ain't. Oh, okay, I get it. You're a real man of the people, sir. Sure, Andy. The View decided to take a shot at JD and parrot another attack by Bashir. He's like, he gets a chance to make all his money and he takes a shot at our people as being lazy, which is just so dishonest. Anybody who's read Hillbilly, Elegy or listened to JD talk about where he comes from knows he's got nothing but love for the people he grew up with. All he wants is to make their lives better. That's literally why he became a politician. But listen to these efforts over at The View.
to. I'm going to pity this man.
All right.
Remember how Mr. T used to pity the fool?
Pity the fool. And who says that people who don't have children are sociopaths? Does that include Mother Teresa and Pope Francis? They don't have kids. Right. Well, I mean, what is he talking about?
Nothing. They're talking about nothing.
To Sarah's clip, to that point, what's so difficult for me is that he writes this thing, Hillbilly Elegy, right?
Yeah.
About sort of growing up poor. And now...
But he blames the people in Appalachia.
That's what I was going to say. But he blames the people for their circumstance. Look, I grew up in poverty. I remember what it feels like to be hungry. I remember what it feels like not to have enough. He's one of those people that wants people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps when they don't have boots. So he has made it out of Appalachia, but he is blaming those people in Appalachia for the structural problems that keep them there. And I think that is the most despicable thing about him.
He wrote a really interesting and smart book
About getting out of poverty.
And didn't recognize that he isn't out of poverty. Well, he is bereft.
He's bereft of morality.
He is bereft of morality. He's bereft
A spine.
of empathy.
Yeah.
No, he's got a spine. It's just not a good one.
Yeah.
It's crooked.
Well, he is poor in that sense.
He's a poor dude.
But Trump's a phony, too.
And I'll just play this one other soundbite, Batya, because he was asked questions like this when Hillbilly Elegy hit. Gave tons of interviews, including to me. Major Garrett of CBS News and he had an exchange in which he said as follows.
I think a lot of folks on the left don't appreciate that people don't want a handout. They don't want government support, and they don't, from the right, want people to talk about the noble entrepreneur. What they want is people to recognize the dignity of working people. And I think that what was genius about the politics of Trump's campaign is that he focused on workers and he focused on jobs. It wasn't about the wealthy entrepreneur with a private jet. It wasn't about a government handout. It was about the folks in the middle.
And he goes on to explain. If you read the book, what he's talking about is some people do have a mentality of apathy. They grow up the way JD grew up, and they feel apathetic, and no amount of government money pouring in on them is going to change that. And for that, acknowledging that reality, he's a classless, heartless cad.
It's so amazing because my copy of Hillbilly Elegy it's the 2018 copy. And so it's sort of festooned with praise from all the same outlets that are now attacking him. The New York Times, the Atlantic, NPR, right? All these places that now refer to him in like the most extremist, horrible terms. And what changed was back then, he was a never Trumper, right? He didn't like Trump. And if you don't like Trump, you can get away with a lot as a conservative in the liberal media. But when he realized that Trump was the one who cared about the middle class, that Trump was the one who offered his hometown the best shot, that was it. They had to do this 180 and turn on him. I want to make a few other points. I think that there is an element to this kind of weird, right? They started calling him weird. First of all, how scary is it how they all parrot each other, right? They're a herd animal.
They should be embarrassed.
The American media. It's so embarrassing because they sound exactly like the politicians they're supposed to be covering adversarially. But let's put that aside. I think there's an element of bullying here, right? Because the idea is we are the ones who confer status. We are the ones who decide what's cool and what's weird, right? It's to make him feel self-conscious. A person who came from nothing, who spent much of his adult life trying to learn the rules of the elites because it is a very different world than the one that he grew up in. And I think the idea is to invoke this enough times in order to make him feel very self-conscious in a very gross way. But also it's so amazing, Megyn, did you notice how last week Trump went from being the biggest threat to democracy we've ever faced to weird? Like there's been kind of a downgrading of the threat posed by the Trump Vance etiquette, right? And I think right. He went from is he Hitler? Is he weird? And I think that they cannot help but expose how they don't actually take any of their accusations seriously. When they say that JD Vance is weird, what they're saying is exactly like you said, Megyn, that, those people from middle America struggling to make it in Joe Biden's economy, who maybe don't go jogging every day and maybe have tattoos and maybe have addictions and they struggle, that those people are weird. Those people are not worthy of our respect and not worthy of dignity. That's what they are saying when they call them weird.
And meanwhile, they're campaigning on like inclusion. You know, differences shouldn't separate us. We should be kind. Okay, what's kind about that? And by the way, I used to tell my kids when they were little, if anybody ever calls you weird, you should say to them in response, yeah, maybe I am. I'd hate to be boring. What's it like? That's what you should say, right? Like, what's wrong with being weird and different from everybody else? They're trying to stigmatize him. I do want to show you, I don't know if you saw this, we played it yesterday. Have you seen the ad with the fat men who are clearly like molester types pitting out? Look at this, Batya. This is from a super PAC supporting Kamala Harris.
We want the government involved in all aspects of your sex life.
Way more involved.
Way more involved.
When you have sexual intercourse, it should be illegal to use contraception. No pills, no condoms.
Your genitals are reserved for procreation.
If you freeze 12 eggs, you should be required to have 12 babies, or else you're a serial killer. And I'm definitely not a serial killer.
Are you?
I'm voting in November.
I'm voting in November. We're all voting in November. Are you?
Because what happens in your bedroom is up to me.
Is up to me and my son. Also, mouth stuff is a sin.
That's what they think of Republicans. None of that comes close to representing Trump's platform at all. And on top of it, that's how they see the Republican voter.
That is so disgusting, and you're so right. And I just, again, have to commend the Trump campaign for what they did vis-a-vis Project 2025, because what they effectively did was neutralize the only policy agenda item that Kamala Harris could have used against Trump, which is abortion. But Trump came out, in support of abortion at 15 weeks. And when Project 2025, which was more restrictive, not much more, but slightly more restrictive, tried to say, we represent the future of this administration, Trump effectively said, no, you don't. I represent what the people want. I know what my voters are looking for. It is my job to reflect what my voters want, not what the elites in my party want. And this was such a brilliant move to change the conversation and really take the strongest bow out of the Harris campaign's quiver. Of course, all of her ads have been using this language that she's developed for her stump speech. If you notice, she keeps saying, we represent the future where all Americans have a shot or have a part in it, right? And what she's trying to do there is, first of all, invoke this racial, gender, identity politics issue, right? To divide people, right? The suggestion is that the Republicans want to exclude certain people from the benefits of the future, when the Democrats clearly have no interest in middle America and helping working class Americans of all races who don't agree with their far left social programming, right? But the idea is also to suggest somehow that Trump is trying to bring us back into the past, when the truth is the past that Trump is trying to recreate is, 2019, which was actually a really good year for America. The bottom 25% of wage earners saw a 4.5% wage increase, and the top 25% only saw a 2% wage increase, which means, Megyn, that Donald Trump was the first president in 60 years to shrink income inequality in America. Now, that is what he should be running on.
The coronation media, however, is doing a good job of persuading Democrats that she is the second coming. And how could you not feel that way if you tuned in to any news channel over the past 10 days? I mean, it's amazing, the whitewashing of her record, the cover they're running to protect her. And now we're getting polls back to show what kind of an effect is it having. Today, we've got the latest Bloomberg Morning Consult poll out. Headline is that she has erased Trump's lead in several swing states. Now, I will say that this poll does not have the best rating, and it has consistently been putting the Biden-Trump contest as stronger for Biden than the other polls have. So take it with a grain of salt. But this is what it shows, that Trump has lost his leads in Nevada, Arizona, and Wisconsin, and that Harris has more than doubled Biden's lead over Trump in Michigan and closed in on his lead in Georgia, where both candidates are currently tied at 47%, that she went up in polls in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. Now, I'll also tell you that none of that is matched by the Real Clear Politics average of all the polls, including the polls that have a much better rating than Bloomberg and Morning Consult. In other words, Bloomberg showing he lost his lead in Nevada. RCP shows Trump has a 4-point lead in Nevada. That's the average of all polls. They're showing he lost his lead in Arizona. Real Clear Politics shows he's up 4.2 in the average of all polls in Arizona. They're showing he lost his lead in Wisconsin. Real Clear Politics showed they're tied, but he's up 0.2% in Wisconsin, and that he's up 3.6 in Georgia. In any event, you got to keep in perspective. But what we're seeing here are the beginnings of what looks like a swing in the swing states in Harris's favor. And it would be one thing, Batya, if you knew she'd gotten out there, she'd made her points, they had a debate, they fought it out, and she was resonating. That's not what's happening. This is an AstroTurf lift that the media has provided her.
Completely. And I wouldn't worry too much about it. I mean, I think that it probably will dissipate somewhat. I don't think the race can be called anymore in the way that it could have before. But, I don't expect this to stick. There was a poll that came out yesterday that found that Harris is actually polling worse with Black voters than Joe Biden was, which didn't surprise me, but surprised a lot of people. Trump is running a very good campaign. The most hilarious thing that he's done so far is he's about to give a rally in the exact same hall in Georgia that Kamala Harris gave hers in yesterday. Another one of his very charming moves. He's addressing, the National Association of Black Journalists today. He's running a nearly perfect campaign. He's keeping the discourse high. He's not falling for any of the traps that the Harris campaign is putting out there for him. If he can keep that up, it's hard for me to imagine that this kind of yassification campaign will get that far, because voters aren't stupid. They're just not. And they need access to the American dream, and they don't have it. And the Democrats have no platform and no agenda to offer them that will help them get there. And I think that that's clear to a lot of people.
I mean, immigration remains a huge issue. It is typically now these days the number one issue for American voters. And that is another thing, of course, the media is running cover for her on, saying she wasn't the border czar. And then if you even take that title out of it, saying she didn't have responsibility for the border, when we know that she did. And she acknowledged that she did at the time. And Joe Biden is on tape saying she did. There was an interview on CNN yesterday between Jake Tapper and Elizabeth Warren, who was voted less liberal than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was voted the number one most liberal person in the U.S. Senate. And they've now scrubbed that from the internet. Not voted, but deemed by this supposedly nonpartisan group that takes a look at voting records. In any event, listen to what Elizabeth Warren said, because we were all trying to figure out who the hell is Kamala Harris? Who is she? Because she said a bunch of things when she was running in 19 that she's now disavowed by campaign statement, not her, not in an interview, not in a presser, not even in a statement that she signed, just her campaign. So we don't know where she stands on a lot of these issues, but here's Elizabeth Warren trying to enlighten us.
By giving the nomination to one of the leaders of the border effort, aren't Democrats doubling down on one of your party's biggest vulnerabilities?
Well, let's remember to start with the facts, and that is that border crossings now are lower than they were in the last year of the Trump administration. But recognize, and I know that Kamala Harris knows this, this is a problem that ultimately has to be solved by Congress. We need the tools in order to have more resources at the border, to have more resources in the states and cities that are supporting migrants. And I believe we need to create a pathway to citizenship. All of that is a part of what we need to do for comprehensive immigration reform. Kamala Harris will work with Congress and get that done.
Okay, so we need to give more money to the illegals and create a pathway to citizenship, and Kamala Harris will get that done. Batya, that is a losing platform if Kamala Harris explicitly endorses that.
And also, Elizabeth Warren knows it's not true. I can't say that about Kamala Harris because I don't know what she knows, what she thinks, what she believes. She is such a cipher to me because she doesn't give interviews. She doesn't, and she changes her mind so frequently. But Elizabeth Warren, like everybody knows, that securing the border was accomplished in 2019 by President Trump, in 2018 and 2017. It was accomplished by executive action because that is how you secure the border. And when they say that, they're just lying through their teeth. They're trying to spin this narrative that has no legs. And I think working class people are just fed up of being lied to all the time.
That nonsense about the immigration rate right now is based on the fact that Joe Biden, losing this presidential election, finally issued an executive order to stop the vast majority of the asylum claims coming. And he could have done this at any point in his presidency. In fact, what he did when he took office was reversed all of Trump's tough on the border policies. So he did that just so he'd give them this talking point so they could say that line that the border crossings right now are down low versus the other 4 years of his presidency when they've been upwards of 3 million a year. Trump had 400,000 a year. Okay? That's the truth. Stand by. More with Batya right after this. First, Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 330 academic programs as of December 2023, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Back with me now, Batya Ungar-Sargon, author of Second Class. So, Batya, another word on the polls, just to underscore what Bloomberg News/Morning Consult found. In Michigan, they're showing Harris is up over Trump by 11. They had been showing Biden up over Trump by 5. In Arizona, they're showing Harris up over Trump by 2. That would be a 5-point swing because they were showing Trump over Biden by 3. In Nevada, they're showing Harris up 2. Again, this would be a 5-point swing because they had been showing Trump up by 3. Now, I don't rule all of this out because not only are they doing their level best to smear JD Vance, but they are absolutely lauding Kamala Harris with this praise that we've been discussing. I mean, I'll just give you a little example. New York Times, I mentioned this earlier, celebrating how her event dwarfed Mr. Biden's campaign events in both scale and enthusiasm. Washington Post, it's boisterous, it's energetic in ways the Democratic Party has arguably not seen for years. Even Wall Street Journal writing up how she's offered a high-octane blast of dancing and music, interjecting fresh energy into the campaign. We're in brat summer, according to CBS. And then there's Claire McCaskill over at Morning Joe with this take on her remarks in Atlanta.
It is a remarkable thing that we are witnessing. This is a woman who's been underestimated by the chattering class. I don't think people realize how hard it is when you're constantly interrupted with a lot of emotional outbursts of a crowd and how you pause and allow that emotion to build, to do it with confidence, with a smile on her face. That's the biggest contrast in this campaign now, Jonathan, is that the Democrats are having fun and it's about joy and opportunity and freedom. And the other side is about, cat ladies.
The way she paused when the crowd cheered and smiled. It's amazing. And of course, the Trump rallies are known for being very depressing events. No one's having a good time. I mean, they were a little blue when he got shot in the face. But other than that, I would say the Trump rallies have been actually quite celebratory. This is ridiculous.
It's really embarrassing. I mean, can you imagine saying about a grown woman that it's an achievement that she paused to receive applause at a rally for her? I mean, the condescension, it's so embarrassing. The refusal to take her seriously as a politician who has done some things in her 59 years, is it? On planet Earth. Yeah. And like, it's so condescending. It's so embarrassing. It's frankly pretty racist. The idea that, we cannot take what she says seriously. We have to experience her at some sort of esoteric level beyond just, did she do a good job at the job she had? Did she keep her word? Was she accountable? Did she represent the American people? Right? Yeah. There's something about it that's really cringe-inducing. And I do think that we are past the place as a society, as a nation, where that is enough. I mean, it's enough for the incredibly wealthy white people who apparently now identify as white people who are joining these calls to raise money for her.
And as women, I don't think they're able to use the W word.
Exactly.
Both W words, white and women. It's amazing.
Right. It's so amazing. And it's so funny because throughout the kind of the peak of the apex of the woke stuff, there were a lot of people saying, if you tell people that they are primarily their race and their gender, you're going to have a lot of white people suddenly being like, okay, well, that's my identity. I'm a white person. And you're not going to like that. Right. And that's literally what we're seeing now. We're seeing people taking on their whiteness as a political identity. But it's okay with the Democrats because they're doing it to become subservient to a person of color. I mean, this is just the most disgusting thing. It's like the reversal of everything that we have been trying to escape from our past, that we successfully escaped from. And they know that because they see all of these people of color who are considering voting for Republicans for the first time in their lives.
It's so ridiculous. Like that no normal Black person wants this. Literally none. I've got a bunch of Black people who listen to the show. They call in, they write me all the time. They would rather die than have us talk about them or treat them like this. But then, it's not just Harris and Claire McCaskill. You mentioned these white women for Trump. We ran some of this yesterday. Look at this moron Ariel Fodor, who, if you look at this person's social media, she speaks to everyone like they're 5 with her lessons about how to be more inclusive. But we all got our first look-see at this gal on her White Women for Trump Zoom. Not Trump.
As white
Harris.
women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes. If you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat. And instead, we can put our listening ears on. So do learn from and amplify the voices of those who have been historically marginalized, and use the privilege you have in order to push for systemic change. As white people, we have a lot to learn and unlearn. So do check your blind spots.
I want this girl to be subjected to 24/7 videotapes of Donald Trump for the foreseeable future. That should be her punishment. She clearly would go nuts. What is she? I had Stephen A. Smith on the show just yesterday. I guess I was racist when I talked over him and the few times I interjected during his... who knew? That was an act of racism and privilege by me. I'm sure Stephen A. Smith does not see it that way.
So the amazing Mary Catherine Ham did a wonderful parody of this woman. Everyone should check it out. It's being very, very getting the praise it deserves on Twitter. She just absolutely nailed it. It's so good. Everything about this woman is everything that is wrong with the Democratic Party, right? The obsession with racial categories and policing people's language, the infantilization of everything. Everyone is a child or a kindergarten teacher, right? The level of discourse is just so insulting. You have to be so privileged to be sitting there and thinking the number one problem facing this country is that a person of color might get interrupted by a white person. She literally said, God forbid, correcting them. I mean, this is where they are at, and this is not where the country is at. It's funny that you said that Black people are insulted by this. I keep saying, the Republicans, conservatives, pro-Trump people avoid calling Kamala Harris a DEI hire. It's, what if somebody's not paying close attention, they're put off by it. Just keep the level of discourse high. And I've also heard from multiple Black friends who said, why pull punches? You think you're protecting us? We think it's disgusting too. Of course, she's a DEI hire. He said he's only going to hire a Black woman. You think we like that? It's so insulting to us. So I've also heard sort of the other side. I still think I'm right, but I've heard that side too.
No, so I would love to speak with this Ariel, but on the other hand, I won't because she seems kind of dumb. But she's entertaining, highly entertaining. And they all sat there on that call like snaps, right on, Ariel, right, BIPOC. You can't correct a BIPOC. They just, like the women, when you're born with the vagina, it gives you the truth-telling gene, and the Black vagina or penis gives you the I'm never wrong gene. Who knew? Okay, you learn something every day on the MK Show. So speaking of affectations, here's Kamala Harris yesterday in Atlanta unveiling what appears to be a new accent.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. Yes, we will.
Okay, she's from California. That's not how she talks. So I don't know whether that was an appeal to Southerners or whether she thought that was an appeal to Black Southerners. Either way, if Donald Trump did it, it would be a story for days on MSNBC.
It's so true. And I think one of the main differences between them is Kamala Harris is very much a chameleon. We don't really know much about her. She's been in the public eye for a very long time, but it's very hard to say who she is or what she is. Donald Trump is always 100% himself. And I think that authenticity is why he's been gaining a lot of support with young people who famously have a very strong BS meter and really don't like, when people come off as fake. I will say, I think both of these candidates are incredible dancers. I would not be opposed to a little bit of a dance off at the next debate.
Trump,
but the thing that makes
his moves are all, this is Trump.
The thing about him is he's being himself, right? Like even in his dancing, you can tell that he doesn't care what anybody thinks. He's being Donald Trump, right?
Look, I am in a glass house. I can't dance at all.
I think that's that contrast, right? I mean, there's a lot of split screens going on here. The elites on the left, taking a duly elected candidate, shoving him off the ticket and replacing him with somebody else, right? Versus Donald Trump sidelining the elites, right? The elites in his party wanted Nikki Haley. Forget it. He blew her out of the water. The elites with the Project 2025, he was like, this is not my thing, right? Big split screen there in whether you're speaking for and to the people or for and to the elites. But I think this authenticity question, even if you don't like Trump, you have to give him that he is very much himself all the time. He's never dishonest about where he's coming from. He's never dishonest about what he's planning to do or planning to say. And I think that compared to this kind of elite, chameleonic, factory settings Democrat that we have in Kamala Harris is going to play a big role in the election.
Hannity, he used to say, Trump doesn't get in trouble because he lies. He gets in trouble because he tells the truth. Like that deposition where he got deposed in the E. Jean Carroll case. And the lawyer was asking him about whether he said, and when you're a celebrity, women will let you grab them by the P word. And Trump's like, yes, I said that because, for thousands of years, that's been the way it is, fortunately or unfortunately. Unfortunately or fortunately, he said. He just says it. Okay, I am going to do something extraordinary now, Batya. I am going to defend Kamala Harris on an attack that's been launched against her. She decided to have Megyn Thee Stallion, appear at her event and sing a cleaned up version of one of her very well-known songs. Hold on a second. I have to get it in front of me because I don't know these songs by heart. It's called Body. And I'll just play you a little bit of the cleaned up version that she sang.
Body crazy, curvy, wait. Yeah. Body crazy, curvy, wait. Yeah. They gon' click it if it's me. On my feet, been getting these through the quarantine. Yeah. I'm very well, come out, as you can tell. Got beef from years ago, it's beefing by herself.
you get that gist. The actual lyrics to this song are body crazy, curvy, wavy, big titties, little waist. Lil waist. Yeah. Num, 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 num. Eat it up. Foreplay. Okay. 3, 2, 1. All my bitches getting these N-word through the quarantine. Yeah. They better know exactly what the F they come to do. Only she says the word. Yeah. That waist, that ass, them titties. Okay. And then took me home, did me long, ate it with the panties on. That very classy stuff. And I guess Kamala Harris saw this actual song and said, I need that at my rally. I need that. That speaks to me. Did it, ate it with the panties on. Yes, I want it. So I can see why it's controversial. It would not have been my choice. I don't think it's particularly classy for the woman who asks us to make her the first female president to be presenting such a thing. However, it was just a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting in Milwaukee and Donald Trump brought out my pal, Kid Rock, who I love, and he sang a version of his great hit, American Badass. Remember this?
Everybody, get a fist up in the air! Now follow me! Say fight! Fight! Say fight! Fight! Say fight! Fight! Say somebody scream!
Okay, so I remember the reason I know, well, I like Kid Rock, but I also know the lyrics to this song because I did an event one time, Batya, and Abby, my assistant, told me that they were insisting that I give them a song that I could walk out to. And I was like, I have no idea what to, I mean, like, I love John Denver. I didn't feel like that would be appropriate, nor would it psych anybody up. And Abby goes, what about Kid Rock's American Badass? I'm like, well, that's too self-congratulatory. I'm not doing that. And then just for kicks, I went to look at what the lyrics are in that show. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. I'm a porno flick. I'm like Amazing Grace. I'm going to F some hoes after I rock this place. So it was a no. I decided against it. It's possible both sides need to think through more the messaging, before they choose the entertainment. It goes on, I'll tell you.
I have to disagree with you, Megyn, because you are definitely the original American badass. That is like, no one can take that away from you. You are, you have always been, and you've always been a hero for a lot of women, myself especially, in that regard. So I think that song would have been totally appropriate on that front. I couldn't even hear the lyrics of the Megyn Thee Stallion song, but to me what stood out was more the dancing, I guess, than the singing. And just this question of like, well, is this family friendly, right? Yeah, exactly. And we were talking about how the GOP is in its big tent era, and what does that mean when do you have enough self-esteem as a party to say, I'm okay catering to the people who maybe don't agree with me or share my tastes, right? I'm going to protect this space so that the people who maybe live in more conservative religious communities could also enjoy this and celebrate this? Or am I going to lean into the things that I think make my side more cool than the other side, right? I think that's sort of
interesting.
The big question at stake here. And that's kind of what was going through my mind when I was watching that.
That's a good point. And I mean, Kid Rock's performance at the RNC was completely clean. He changed the words entirely to celebrate Trump and did not limit its appeal in any way. By the way, just in case you're wondering, what I went with was Born Free by Kid Rock, which is a great song. And actually, to be honest, I wish he had sung it at Trump's RNC as well, because I think it's one of his best, and it just gives you all the feels. I like it even more, God forgive me, a little blaspheme here, than Lee Greenwood's Proud to Be an American. I love the song Born Free. On 4th of July, sometimes we have a boat, we'll fly our flag, we'll go around, they have like a boat parade, we'll blast that song, and just, you feel so good, you feel so patriotic. And I really hope we're feeling that way on November 5th of this year. Batya, you're the best. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you so much for having me, Megyn. God bless you. Thank you for everything you do.
Oh, you too, babe. To be continued. Okay, and up next, Dr. Drew is here. Plenty to go through with him. In fact, I think the first thing we should do is take a shot at figuring out what is wrong with Ariel Fodor. Why does she talk like that to the little babies, especially the white people in their corrections of BIPOC? That's next. Do you owe back taxes? Pandemic relief is now over, has been for a while. Along with hiring thousands of new agents and field officers, the IRS kicked off the first half of 2024 by sending over 5 million pay-up letters to those who have unfiled tax returns or balances owed. Don't waive your rights and speak with them on your own. That's scary and it's unnecessary. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and they can help you secure the best deal possible. Whether you owe 10 grand or 10 million, they can help you. Whether it's business or personal taxes, even if you have the means to pay, or if you don't, if you're on a fixed income, they can help finally resolve your tax burdens once and for all. Call 1-800-245-6000 for a private free consultation, or just visit tnusa.com/Megyn. In these crazy times, there's peace of mind in security. Security for our country, security for our leaders, and security for our families. But think about this. You're not financially secure if all of your eggs are in one financial basket. Gold and silver can be an amazing way to diversify your savings as a hedge against inflation. They are a physical asset that's in high demand globally. And through Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. Yes, you can diversify an old IRA or 401k for no money out of pocket into an IRA in gold and silver. Just text MK to 989898 and receive a free, no-obligation info kit and learn the role precious metals could play in your overall savings strategy. Again, text MK to 989898. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands and thousands of happy customers. Text MK to 989898. Message and data rates may apply. Welcome back to the Megyn Kelly Show. The coronation of Kamala Harris is most prominent on social media. Young Gen Z voters trying their hardest to memify her. She's brat. Vox declaring that the coconut piling of America is happening. No, pilling, coconut pilling. Oh my God, that is just so cringy. I can barely say it. The coconut pilling of America. What the F? And then there's those bizarre, racially segregated Zoom calls. What the hell is happening in our culture? Joining me now, my pal, Dr. Drew Pinsky. He is the host of Ask Dr. Drew and so much more. Dr. Drew, welcome back. Great to have you.
Megyn, it's always good to be here. Boy, I mean, listen, I hope we can slog our way through this, but I'm as astonished as anybody. But two things first. First, I'm putting on my listening ears, okay? Okay? Are you okay? Okay, good. So I'm putting on my listening ears like the young lady asked me to. But more importantly, I'm just so grateful you didn't read those rap lyrics with me on the show. Something about you reading it to a young woman was different than if an older male was sitting there. It would have been very uncomfortable, and thank you for not doing that.
I'll tell you what, my favorite dramatic reading of the past week has been President Biden getting off the airplane and being asked about the House Speaker's statement that his Supreme Court reforms are dead on arrival, in response to which Joe Biden said, "He's dead on arrival." He said, "What? What?" And he said it again. "He's dead on arrival." What does it mean?
Yeah.
I hope it makes sense. All right, I do want to play you a little Ariel, and I'm going to get your armchair diagnosis of what the hell is wrong with this woman.
We're going to try.
As white women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes. If you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat. And instead, we can put our listening ears on. So do learn from and amplify the voices of those who have been historically marginalized, and use the privilege you have in order to push for systemic change. As white people, we have a lot to learn and unlearn. So do check your blind spots.
So there we are.
Yes, sir.
So a couple things. It's funny, when she was treating me like a 5-year-old in that little video, I found myself thinking, when my kids would talk to me in certain ways when they were 5 years old, I would always say, I can't hear you when you talk like that. That's how we would respond to them to try to adjust their speech. And that's the way I feel when this young lady talks to me. I literally can't, she's saying some legitimate things, but I can't hear it because of the way.
What word was legitimate? None of that was legitimate.
Well, I mean, it's okay to watch for your blind spots. Okay, fine. If I'll watch my blind spots, I make a practice of that. I like to do that, but I couldn't hear it coming from
people. Do you have a rule against correcting any BIPOCs?
No, I don't have a rule against that. But let me just say this one thing. My theme for the day, as I thought about coming in here, is nobody should be telling other people how to live their life. That this is a country based on freedom. And the fact that we have people preaching to us and telling us who we are and how we must live is disgusting. Now, the problem for me is that, listen, much of my career, Megyn, I was casting off the right who were telling me what I couldn't talk about on the radio, for instance. Yeah, that's true. And that came from, if you remember, the moral majority and the religious right. The right has not yet shaken off that past. The left still thinks that's who the right is. Presently, I receive no feedback from anybody on the right about what I should or shouldn't be saying, other than, good, you're fighting for freedom and the freedom to say whatever the hell you want, and the freedom for me allowing anybody else to say whatever the hell they want. In the meantime, I've got people on the other side who I thought were liberal, telling me what I can say, where I can say it, how it can be said, and actively censoring me, and has been doing so since the debacle of COVID. That's been going on for quite some time now. And we can't seem to reconcile these two worlds. And so we have the left telling us how to live our lives, what to say, what not to say. We have the right saying, hey, fight for freedom. You should be fighting for freedom. Yeah, in the past, maybe we did get a little too excessive with telling you what you should and shouldn't talk about. Sorry, let's get on to freedom fighting. In the meantime, the women like this are manifesting these what's called passive aggressive. That's a passive-aggressive posture.
Yes.
She thinks she's being empathic and attuned and so thoughtful, but underneath it, you feel the seething aggression, which is, I'm telling you, do not interfere with those people because I know better. And it should disgust you. It should disgust you. There's a seething underneath this that is different. It just makes you recoil. That's why I couldn't hear what she was saying. If she just said what she meant, hey, everybody, here's what you ought to do. I think, listen to me. Everyone listen to me. I mean, that's what Trump does all the time. Everyone should listen to me. I've got some ideas. Fine, I'm interested in ideas. I want to hear what you have to say. But when you are preachy and you're passive aggressive, it's extremely unpleasant to receive.
That is so true. That's why you receive it where you're like, I can't stand you. By the way, Batya told us that we needed to see MK Ham's response to that bit. And we pulled a little bit of it for the audience. Watch here.
Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O. It seems like we've had a little misunderstanding. Sounds like some of you have some silly goose thoughts about race-segregated political meetings. Catch a bubble. We do have special meetings for white women and white men. These people are gathering because they don't want to, does anybody know, because they don't want to be around people of other races? No, that is a super sad choice of how to characterize that. They're gathering together because they don't want Republicans elected. We have to fight white supremacy, friends, by joining white-only groups of friends.
Yeah, exactly right. Nothing says I want to be with BIPOCs like excluding them from my call.
But back to the passive-aggressive posture of the original video. Do you remember Mary Poppins singing to us about misinformation and disinformation? Do you remember that? That was the same thing, which, remember, we had a disinformation czar for 5 minutes?
Oh yeah, I thought you meant the actual Mary Poppins, meaning Julie Andrews.
No,
yes,
she was singing,
Nina Jankowicz. Yes,
yeah,
I do.
she was putting everything to words of supercalifragilistic or something like that. I don't even remember what the song was, but it was something from Mary Poppins. And that was... listen to me, you people. But behind that was, because if you don't listen to me, we're going to cancel your ass. We're going to censor you. We're going to talk to X, or at that time Twitter. And it really, it's interesting. There is a feeling that is coming up on from the left a lot. If you have any kind of feelings about what's being preached at you, which is disgust. Disgust is the feeling that I'm constantly plagued with. I was disgusted by how some of my profession behaved during COVID. I was disgusted by the censorship. I'm disgusted about the passive-aggressive preachiness. And disgust is a very powerful emotion. It makes us recoil. It makes us push away from things. And don't avoid it. The disgust is telling you something. It's one of our most powerful indicators of something being wrong. If you are disgusted, listen to your brain and body when it's telling you something out there is disgusting, because if it is, there is meaningful material there that you should be addressing or avoiding.
Yes, gosh, that makes so sense. It's just the same way that, like, you know, there's sugar and peaches that made us want to eat them. Like, nature has a way of attracting you to good things and repelling you from the things that are not good. Let's take a look at the men. We spent some time on the ladies, the white women for Kamala. Let's take a look at what the white dudes for Kamala were saying.
And I'm so grateful every single day to the people in my life and in marginalized communities that educate me every single day.
Yes, women's freedom is Exhibit A. After Donald Trump demolished the right to choose. But of course, men are also more free in a country where we have a president who stands up for things like access to abortion care.
What a variety of whiteness we have here. We got the dude, we got Pete. It's like a rainbow of beige.
Kamala is carrying on her shoulders 248 years of pain, of agony, of hope, of frustration.
I know that we have a lot of speakers. And afterward, of course, there's another Zoom that I invite you all to called Couches Against Trump, better known as CATS. And JD Vance is his mini-me.
That's a pig remark.
I even created my own cognitive test that describes the two of them. Sofa, dolphin, shark, cats, convict.
That's a pig remark. He's a pig. He continues to repeat that smear of JD Vance. The guy, I'm not going to repeat it again, but the guy who made up the smear of JD Vance with his alleged couch thing is admitting, there's interviews with him now online, admitting he made the whole thing up just to troll people, see if they would go with it. And they did. You've got the sitting governor of Illinois. This is the guy whose family is behind the trans push in all the schools, trying to shove it down little boys' mouths that they might be girls if they like purple. That's him. Out there trying to perpetuate this smear against JD Vance, who's done nothing other than serve his country honorably as a Marine, as a U.S. Senator, and now as Trump's running mate. Deeply wrong. Not to mention the celebration of men can be so free when their women can have abortions. Free to do what, Pete? Go on.
Right. And this whole thing, it really, I kind of was disappointed to see so many people that I really admire in this group getting so preachy and so saccharine. And so, frankly, if I had spoken to any of these individuals, let's say a week before, is that how you would have expressed yourself to me about who you are and what you're doing? This is all sort of grand. Look, everybody's doing what's politically expedient right now. I mean, it's just this weird, I almost want to call it dishonest, or including the things like the hoaxes and the fact that we get swept into these things. So one theme for the day is people telling other people how to live their lives. Not American. That is not something we should be doing in this country. You should recoil against anybody who's telling you how to live your life. And unfortunately, they are successfully painting the right as having done so with leaving the abortion issue to the states. The really interesting question to any of them should be, hey, if Trump gets into office, do you want him, the federal government, him as president, deciding what you do with your body? No, he doesn't want anything to do with telling you what to do with your body. He left it to the states. And so this business of doing whatever, I say is again, that should disgust you. But the other thing, the other phenomenon that is so pervasive right now and so very concerning to me is hysteria. And this is, again, what I'm pointing at when I say these men that I admire would not have spoken like this a week ago, but they're swept into this political hysteria around the coronation of Kamala Harris. And I've been reading a lot of history lately, trying to understand our present moment. I mean, in the middle of COVID, I had this crazy experience where a young male security guard just pressed out, was screaming at me at the entrance to the hospital where I've been attending for almost 40 years. "Show me your papers." And I just thought to myself, oh my God, this is how people became prison guards in Germany. This is it. I'm watching it happen. And I was reading some material from 1933 Germany, and the word hysteria came up multiple times, that the Germans were whipped into an hysteria. And I thought, God, I never thought about that period of history as being an hysteria also. Pre-revolutionary France, hysteria. Russia during the revolution, hysteria. Hysterias are very dangerous. It's how we get whipped into mobs. And unfortunately, we have these social media instruments now that encourage mob behavior. And the emotion and the focus on emotion that's flying around and these tendencies to fly from one direction to the other is, strictly speaking, hysterical. And underneath that is something that we are all, I don't want to say guilty of, we all have a piece of in our development these days, is narcissism. Narcissism makes us prone to hysterical excess and envy and empathic failure.
What is it, narcissism that makes a president who is deteriorating daily, who cannot have a meeting with a foreign dignitary, who cannot put two sentences together, stay in the office while admitting he can't serve a second term?
For sure, there's cluster B stuff there. We call that narcissistic disorders. But there's another phenomenon that we're just in massive denial about in this country. It's a term called anosognosia. It was coined in the early 20th century by a man named Babinski. And it's something we know well in stroke patients, particularly when the stroke is in the right side of the brain. There is a denial of, an inability to perceive left side of the body and left side of the world, but no awareness that the left side is missing. That's called anosognosia. Well, lo and behold, most brain and psychiatric conditions, when they become more severe, have some version of anosognosia. We call it lack of insight, we call it denial, but underneath it, it's a biological process that blocks our ability to see what's happening to us. It's why families all over this country are dealing with aging parents getting together, and maybe they're not trying to figure out how to get that person to relinquish power and get out of office. They're trying to figure out how to get the car keys away from grandpa. This is happening all over the place. But because grandpa doesn't see what's happening to him, he keeps driving. And God forbid he kills somebody or kills somebody else. But that happens a lot of the time now because it's extremely difficult for people to break through this phenomenon. It's why people end up on the streets. They have anosognosia because they can't see what is happening to them as a result of their mental illness and drug use. But Parkinsonism, various dementias, just aging, having had brain surgery, President Biden's had 2 brain surgeries, can set you up for these sorts of conditions associated with anosognosia later. So he literally, when he blurts out things that, like you said, I forget what it was you quoted about coming into. Yeah, he's on arrival. He has no awareness that that's not coming out in a way that he means it to come out, or that he is impaired in any way. This is anosognosia. It's a feature. It's not a problem associated with. It is a feature of these conditions.
When you were talking, it reminded me of my favorite bumper sticker, which reads, "I want to die quietly in my sleep like my grandpa, not kicking and screaming like the passengers in his car." That's kind of our brutal president right now.
It's harsh, but listen, it brings up a second point too, which is, hey, listen, we're here trying to decide whether somebody is sufficiently impaired that they shouldn't have access to car keys. Shouldn't we have a little higher standard for leader of the free world? I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation about being functional versus able to lead the free world, which should be a different standard. It should be different than
escalating in the Middle East right now, Dr. Drew. We've got Iran openly, we got the war escalating in the Middle East right now with Iran openly threatening us and Israel, our ally. We've got, we've got Hezbollah and Israel and that dispute amping up. It'd be nice to have a commander-in-chief we understood was truly in command. We don't. I never got your take on this. Do you think, I realize you can't diagnose somebody you haven't evaluated, but from what you've seen, Do you think this is a Parkinson's situation? Because, the White House, of course, kept saying, no, but we don't trust them.
So here's how we teach medical students about Parkinsonism. We show them videos of people with Parkinsonian features. And you could easily show President Biden's video as an example of these Parkinsonian phenomenon. Okay, Parkinsonism, different than Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease obviously caused Parkinsonism, but many things cause Parkinsonism. In his case, it's freezing. You see him, he always freezes with his hands up here. It's motoric slowing. It's waxen or mask-like faces. He has difficulty showing expression on his faces. It's narrow, festinating gait. He has all of this. That's just a fact. He has Parkinsonism. He has Parkinsonian features. The only thing we don't know, and no way I can diagnose, is what is causing it. Now, when a physician sees Parkinsonism, he or she runs through a list of possible causes in our head. So in this case, could be Parkinson's disease, could be his previous neurosurgeries, which he's had 2 for aneurysm, could be something more serious like Alzheimer's or Lewy body dementia, could be vascular dementia, could be something obscure that we've not really thought of, or it could be medication reactions even. Sometimes medicines can cause Parkinsonism. But to say that he doesn't have Parkinsonism is simply factually false. So when we hear that this Parkinsonian expert went to the White House and didn't see the patient, didn't see the president, my question is not, did he see the patient? Why the hell not? What are you doing? Did you have a Parkinsonian leader and you don't let him see an expert in the condition he has? What is wrong with you? And what is wrong with the press, in the press pool, for not going, why didn't he see somebody? It's obvious to anyone watching what these things are. You're telling me you're refusing to allow this man to get treatment? Now, one fear I have is sometimes the medicines for Parkinsonism can affect cognition. And I'm wondering if they're struggling when they try to think about treating him with, oh, geez, can we use these medications sufficiently to relieve some of his symptoms? And you do see his facial expressions start to come on sometimes, which suggests that he is taking something, Mirapex or Cinemet or something, but it can affect cognition and judgment.
Wow. So you might not want to give your candidate that before a debate as opposed to before a teleprompter speech. Because one is just reading, but the other you actually have to use the wheels.
Exactly right. And I think that's what happened. I think that's, and by the way, another feature of Parkinsonism is hypophonia, where they can't create their voices, they can't create volume in their voice, and mumbling. That's part of it too. It's all Parkinsonism. Now, may or may not be Parkinson's disease. I don't know. I have not evaluated him. I don't know what's going on. But any video, if any second-year medical student could not identify this as Parkinsonism, as I saw one neurologist on TV say the other day, that medical student would be remediated immediately because that's a fail. And so it's that simple. Now, the causations is a whole other problem. NBC.
All right. Now, this is not about medical diagnosis. By the way, that just FYI for listeners at home, the man we're talking about is still the sitting president of the United States. Just FYI. We still have no idea what's wrong with him, whether he's in command. War appears to be escalating in the Middle East. Don't know who the commander-in-chief is. Secondly, Kamala Harris running to be commander-in-chief. This we know. And it occurred to me, since you're so good at understanding, yes, obviously medicine, because you're an MD, but also just people. Could you explain to me why she, up until 8 days ago, was infamous for answers like this? What is she doing in these word salad answers?
I am meeting with a lot of folks, and the work that we have begun is the work that is going to be ongoing. There is no question, and I said this from the very beginning, that our approach to this issue has to be with a commitment to a long-term investment, and it has to be a commitment to consistency. The United States has to be consistent. There were times when we were more engaged and we saw good results, less engaged, and we can see where the work and the partnerships then deteriorate. So I am committed to ensuring that we engage in an active way on the root causes, on addressing the cause and effect, and also being partners in the Western Hemisphere understanding that we have a responsibility, and if we ignore that responsibility, it will visit itself upon us in a very domestic way. So
Oh my God. Help me, Dr. Drew.
Megyn, I'm so sorry. I am as bewildered as you are by this. All I know is that she is not a good public speaker extemporaneously. That is for sure. And you could see her that she's not a good, well, listen, I don't know her, but the thinking is not good. The thoughts are going from one thing to the next. And it may all just be because anxiety, because she doesn't know how to speak extemporaneously. She better learn. It's weird because she does seem to sort of do better on the debate stage, and she certainly is interesting when she's interviewing another person, but when it's trying to express an idea, it is wow. It's just, I don't know what that is. And this is the extraordinary phenomenon of Kamala Harris, which is 5 minutes ago, that was her with the cackling laughter. She was sort of a joke, and then the media campaign and the propaganda kicked in, and I am gravely concerned about propaganda in this country.
Yeah,
the fact that we used to have anti-propaganda laws and that we undid all that is very concerning, and we need to really look at that. But the propaganda machine kicked in, and all of a sudden, she is the Messiah. She's Cleopatra, and maybe we were wrong about her. I don't know, but I don't know that this is right. It all seems disingenuous, and I spent a lot of my day just going, I just don't know what is going on. I don't believe anything in the press, anything. I'm sorry. The mainstream media, I have no idea if what they're telling me has any connection to reality whatsoever.
You shouldn't. Can I tell you, when I listen to her, she reminds me of the way you feel when you have low blood sugar and you just kind of ramble and you don't land your point. You're kind of like,
well, it's why people. Yeah, because your brain isn't working right in that circumstance, and that's why people have speculated. Was there a substance here? How do we understand what this was? I mean, it seems so hard to understand how somebody who is a high functioning individual, an attorney general, a prosecutor, how is this the same person? And I got to admit, I feel that way too. Go ahead. You tell me.
I was just going to say, it's very clear. I mean, look, people want to say it's a sexist attack on her. It's a fact that she slept her way into San Francisco politics with Willie Brown, and he was 30 years her senior, and he certainly did pave her way into her two paid positions where she made bank and then helped her win as San Francisco DA. And I'm sure it didn't hurt even in that race that she was black and she was a woman in California, and then got elevated by the same machine to the position of attorney general, and then got elevated by the same machine, California, which values this DEI thing greatly, to U.S. Senator. And then Joe Biden explicitly said, I'm going to pick a black woman. That's how he got the nomination, by promising Jim Clyburn he would do that. She got elevated once again to a position that, let's face it, doesn't generally require that much. And now here she is telling us that she's qualified to be leader of the free world, and the medal's not meeting the road.
So think about it this way. So you should, the Willie Brown thing, you should at least, everybody should be at least raising one eyebrow, like, huh? What was that? But I think what that all is evidence of how much of a political animal Kamala Harris is. She is truly a political animal. And as such, and there are lots of political animals in politics, right? They're in Washington. They're all over the place. That's how people, I guess, do this today. But the thing that I find interesting is it seems like the Democratic leadership likes having people in these positions of authority that don't clearly have positions of their own that they can sort of dictate to. I feel the same way about Biden too. Like, who is actually in charge? Who is actually filling his head with these thoughts? Where is this coming from? This is very different than the man we heard from 10 years ago, certainly, or even 5 years ago. And I have a feeling Kamala Harris may be the same way. So whatever she is coached into may not be her own personal values and thoughts. Now, the problem is, once she gets in power, are we now going to see this far left individual that she's been much of her career? And is she going to start exerting that? And that's the question.
That's who she really is. And then we're going to get people like Ariel trying to lecture us if we actually question the sitting president of the United States because she happens to be BIPOC, so we're not allowed to say anything. I want to ask you quickly, because you mentioned censorship, and it's been pretty nuts how now it's come out that Facebook, Meta, had been censoring accurate pictures of the Trump assassination attempt They say it was because, there had been one that was fake, and then we just sort of, the algorithm got the ones that were real and censored it.
Yeah.
At the same time, Molly Hemingway of the Federalist was showing this online. If you type in on Google search Trump or assassination of Chi-R, it still doesn't bring up Donald Trump. You know how usually it anticipates what you're going to say. No, she couldn't get it to say anything about Donald Trump. The Google AI, same problem. It's not. So it's a form of censorship. It's like they're trying to memory hole the Trump assassination attempt because it makes him look fairly heroic.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about it. And Elon Musk has been retweeting a lot of the examples because he just with the word "wow" attached to it. Like, look at this, my goodness. And of course they're censoring. I'm sure you get censored on Facebook. I get censored on Facebook. You get downgraded. You have difficulty putting your material on there. There is just no doubt that certain platforms reserve the right to censor as they wish. Now, they have said that what they're going for is no political violence. Well, all the other forms of political violence are showing up there except that one. And by the way, when did everybody become, as soon as everybody became an expert on hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, words they just learned how to pronounce, they also became experts on how to dress an ear wound. Experts. Everybody knows exactly how to dress an ear wound. So the reality is, when I dress an ear wound in the ER, I wrap the thing around their head, the gauze around the head. And I bet he resisted that. I bet they tried to do that to him. I had it for a while and he took that off or resisted it. So those experts that said there was too big a bandage, okay, fine. Next time you're in the ER, tell me how you dress a pinna wound.
Same, like a cartoon character. That's how I would have expected to be, right around, with like the bloody spot on the side. And by the way, like they'd ever censor it if, God forbid, there was an assassination attempt on, like, God forbid, Kamala Harris. That would come right up. That would be something they'd want to promote. She'd look badass. It's just so sick. The only way to fight for now is to speak out and remind people.
Fight
Dr.
for
Drew?
freedom. I never think I'd be a freedom fighter in my life. Here I'm late in my career. That has become the priority in my life. It should be everyone's concern. No one should be telling you what to say or how to live.
Right on.